and the list goes on here, but some of the issues that are important for that you see for District 78.
Oh man, well, you know, when I look at there are two that are key. I'm trying not to necessarily prioritize the list because it really is the list is itself its own priority. But
Mm-hmm.
education is a big one, especially given what's happening right now.
Intervention.
Yes, and the potential outcome
Mm-hmm.
of that intervention. Um, that and economic development. And I know that that term is fairly broad, so let me just break that down a little bit. When I drive around District 78, when I take Selma Mobile Highway and just drive from the South Lawn area around just to Court Street and the corner of Court Street and Fairview,
Mm-hmm.
and recognize that between that drive, probably a good, you know, 2.5 to 3 miles, there are two grocery stores. There are two, and the numbers, um, of quality offerings and experiences. The fact that most of the folk in District 78 have to drive, many of them 6 miles to get to a supermarket, or have to drive a great distance to get to see a movie in a theater, or have to drive to go to a really nice restaurant,
Mm-hmm.
or shopping, or any number of things that I think a lot of folk in the community deserve as a part of their quality of life experiences. Then when I look at the economy, you know the the economy of the west side as opposed to the east side of the city is dramatically different. You know, what are the what's happening? What's happening in what I call these opportunity deserts,
Mm-hmm.
where our folk are not having access to these types of experiences? What are some things that need to be done that we know we can do to create more of those opportunities, create jobs? Look, I grew up in the Brookview Shorten Heights community. I remember back in the 70s. I'm a 70s child.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember so many of those factories that were operating at the time. Brockway Glass
Right.
Company and J.P. Stevens Cotton Plant. It changed. The dynamics of the community were different. It was a working class neighborhood of individuals who, for the most part, while all did not work in the factories near the neighborhood, many of them were teachers and ministers and what have you. But there was a whole different kind of quality in the neighborhood. We all know that criminal pathologies follow a lack of quality life experiences. And so these individuals who worked in these factories and put their kids through college, who were able to maintain a quality life experience, we, when you took those experiences and quality of life offerings away from the
Mm-hmm.
community, we see what's happening now as a result of it. We see this level of desolation in the community. We see what I feel is a sense of hopelessness and despair in the community. And yet, if you haven't been exposed to see something other than what you have right now, then you think this is all that you have.
Right.
This is an expectation. So there's been an expectation failure to somehow not get to the point of recognizing that we can have something better. So economic development takes on several different layers for me, especially in that district, considering the fact that in the district is Hyundai Motor Company. In the
Mm-hmm.
district is Maxwell Air Force Base.
Right.
And so I'm interested to know, you know, what are those two major institutions? One is a multinational corporation. What is their good neighbor kind of response to the community? What are some of the incentives that we've offered them, certainly at the state level, that should be somehow moving into the community? Very interested to know how those things will be effective in helping our community. And then obviously coming up with innovative ideas that can inject new blood into uh, the mainstream of the West Side, including light rail
Mm-hmm.
transportation. Something that we have to have an imagination that's also informed. And I think somewhere along the way, that's the vision that's kind of been lost to some extent.
Before we wrap up, let the audience know who is Kirk Hatcher. And we know that you're an educator. Uh, Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
That's a good question. I'm trying to find out who Kirk Hatcher is every single day. And the best way for me to know more about who I am is pretty much mirrored by the people that I interact with,
Mm-hmm.
to include, but is not limited to, uh, my dear, sweet, precious mama, who um, who just prayed me into where I am right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because things could have gone differently, especially when you're talking about single parents. But she would be the first to say that she had an immense amount of help, and because of that, that help, that's the person ultimately who, without her knowing it, gets me into the race to run. That person is the person who cares about other folk,
Mm-hmm.
who cares about what's happening to our young people, who cares about what's happening to elderly folk. I just lost my beloved aunt, my aunt Betty, who passed away in July of last year, and who was a nurse for almost 50 years. And when I look at the state of health care,
Mm-hmm.
just when she was transitioning, and what was happening with regards to if we ended up having to place her in a nursing home, and the little house that Mama and Aunt Betty lived in, and the nickels that they were able to put together to get this place would have been in jeopardy of losing it, because you have to sign over that portion of the house to the nursing home.
Right.
Any number of those things. Those are the things that have shaped my genuine desire and values, both in terms of what I've seen in the present, things that have shaped me in the future. I mean, in the past. I'm a guy who grew up, as I said, in Brookview, Sherton Heights. I went to the schools in the area, and attended church at Pilgrim Rest,
Mm-hmm.
where was the home church. My Aunt Betty was a member there 70 years. Um, Mom as well, in terms of their coming in when they were babies, and then bringing me up, and then all those folk who shaped that story, and who brought this person to the point of saying, okay, here's a guy who went around, was singing in churches here in the community, and playing for choirs the age of my mother when I was 9 years old. Rooted in that experience of the values of what the Christian faith would do, not as a simple ideology, but what you practice. What are you doing? That is the person who seeks to always be available to people, even when you don't have enough to be available to, and who wants to see and other folk inspired to get up and do things, and to be engaged in whatever it is you do to create and deliver a better outcome than what we presently have. Because I know we can always do better.
Kirk Hatcher, my guest. He's a candidate for the House District 78 seat in the Alabama House of Representatives. Thank you so very much for stopping by. It was a pleasure to sit down and talk with you, and look forward to talking with you again
Thank you.
real soon.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you.
All right, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue with more right here on WVAS.